Hello everyone, Craig Ripley here. Welcome to another edition of Living Off the Slab. What I would like to do today is continue our discussion on how to create your motorcycle touring route. However, before I get going, I want to bring something to your attention. As everybody knows, we're planning this big trip heading up to Alaska for 2017. And I thought, why not use this as an opportunity to raise some money for a great cause? For the last several years, my riding club, the Massachusetts Bay Victory Riders, has been supporting a group called Homes for Our Troops. And what this group does is they build custom homes for disabled vets from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. I've had a chance to go to some donor appreciation days for Homes for Our Troops. And let me tell you, what they do really impacts the lives of these vets, and not only them, but their families. I mean, I've seen what having a home that is wheelchair accessible, that is custom outfitted to their particular disability does to make their lives so much better. Now, you can find out more about Homes for Our Troops by visiting their website at www.hfotusa.org. And if you visit my website at www.livingofftheslab.com, you'll notice on the home page right there, there's a donate button, and everything goes to Homes for Our Troops. I don't make a dime off of this, so please donate to a great cause. Okay, so let's get back to our discussion on how to create your motorcycle touring route. Now, if you remember from the last video, we had gone through 4 basic steps on how to create your route. So step 1, that was pretty easy, right? We just had to figure out where it is we want to go. Then in step 2, what we did was sit down with our computer and start doing some searches. Find out what it is that we want to see along the way. Are there any great roads that we want to ride, or any cool things that we want to see? Figure out all of that stuff before we sit down to create our route. Right. So then step 3 was to actually sit down and start creating our route. And you can do that in a number of different ways. If you like maps, you can sit down and create that route with the maps. For me, I like to sit down on the computer. I have some mapping software. Again, I use Tire to Travel, and that works very well for me. And I sit down and I create my entire route from start to finish. And I make sure that I then route it through all of those cool places and great roads that I want to ride. So after I've done that, what I have is essentially my ideal route. That is, if I had all the time in the world and I want to go to this place and then come back again, these are all the cool things I want to see. Now, can I really do that in the time frame that I have allocated? Well, that's where step 4 came in. So in step 4, what we did was we sat down with a calculator and we figured out if we can do this ideal route in the time frame that we have available to us. For me, in this Alaska trip, using it as an example, we have 35 days, 5 weeks in order to do this trip. And the total miles on the trip is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 11,500 miles. So I had to sit down and punch in how many miles do I have to travel each day in order to do this trip. And by the time I calculated in rest days and all those other things, we came out to the fact that we had to cover somewhere in the neighborhood of 344 or 345 miles every day on average in order to do this trip. Okay, so now we're to the point where we can start this second portion of planning a route, right? And that is, we need to take this big route that we created, our ideal route, and we need to break it up into individual days or individual segments. Now, the primary reason for splitting your route up into individual days is so you can be more precise during each of those days, each of those segments of your route. You're better off breaking your route up into individual days. That way you can maximize, right, the detail that you can put into each individual day. Right, so let's zoom in here and take a look at just one fairly simple example of how I'm going to break up each of these days and mark some places that I want to see or things that I think are important along this segment. For this example, we're going to be going from Laird River in BC up to Whitehorse in the Yukon. a distance of about 401 miles. From what I've read, this is probably a good place to try to pack on some extra miles. So that's why we're trying to extend this day out to that 400-mile range. At first glance, this is a pretty simple route. You're staying on one road, the Alcan Highway, all the way from Laird River up to Whitehorse. So you can just have a start and an end point, and it would work fine. However, what we're going to do is to zoom in on a couple of locations to help us find a couple of things that we want to see along the way, and also to help us find some gas stations. So the first place we're going to put an extra waypoint here is at Watson Lake. Now if we zoom in, you can see that there's something we want to see here. There is the Signpost Forest, which is a place you've got to go if you've never been up there before. And we have not. And also there are restaurants and there are gas stations right here. So we're going to fill up both our bellies and our gas tanks before we head out back on the road again. Now, after we leave Watson Lake, we might be able to make it all the way to Whitehorse. I think it's something around 270, 280 more miles to go. So it's going to be close. I mean, probably we might not be able to make it. I know Peter, who's going to be on his Triumph, his gas tank's a little smaller. Even though he does get more mileage, that might be tough for him. So we'd like to be able to find gas somewhere along the way. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark a location where, at least due to my research and what I can find on the map, is likely to have a gas station. So zooming in here, this is a location called Jake's Corner, and they have Jake's Corner gas right there. So again, I'm going to find out if this actually still exists, but right now on the map, this looks like a good place, and again, between Watson Lake and between Whitehorse, that we can stop and fuel up before our final push. So the last thing I'm going to do for this route this day is I am going to zoom into our end location in Whitehorse. Now, I could just drop a point anywhere in Whitehorse and it would get us there, but I want to do a little bit more research here. I want to find either a campground or a hotel that we're going to stay in for the night, and I'm going to take us directly to that location so that when I get there after a long day, this is a 400-mile day, I don't have to worry about hunting down this location. I can go straight to it. In this case, because we're doing a long day, because we've been on the road for about a week now from leaving Boise, we're going to take a day off the bike. We're going to stay at a hotel in Whitehorse just to relax and get ready for the next leg of the trip. So that's basically the process, right? You're going to go through each segment of your trip, and you're going to figure out where you're going to start, where you're going to end. You're going to find cool things to go see. You're going to find places to eat. You're going to find places to stay, places to get gas. Whatever items you need to add to this segment, again, to make your life a little easier while you're out there on the road, you're going to go through each segment and you're going to do that. Now, of course, your primary concern here is keeping yourself on the route that you want to go on. Again, in an example I just showed here, it's pretty simple, straightforward. So I'm marking more important places that I want to see, not so much the road that I want to go. But when I've been on other rides, going down to North Carolina and some of those twisty roads and so forth, you really got to add a lot more waypoints to keep yourself on the right route. Right, so it just varies with each individual route that you're doing. Use as many waypoints as you need in order to make the route do what you want it to do. I take this process one step further than this. After I've created my individual GPX files, then I put all of these segments into a big spreadsheet. It comes out something like this. And what I track is my start location, my ending location. I track how many miles I'm going that day and how many cumulative miles that I've gone. I also leave a space for every day where I can list the hotel we're staying at or the campground we're staying at or some other cool stuff that we want to see along the way. And then I bring this spreadsheet with me. I print it out and I bring it with me. So if I need to refer to it, then I've got it. I also can share this spreadsheet with the other guys that I'm traveling with so that they know what we're doing and they can provide their input if there's something else that they want to come and see along the way. right? It's just really helpful to get the trip all planned, and then you know, again, the distances that you're traveling and have everything mapped out. So that's pretty much it. That's how it all works. All right, so before I get off of breaking up your route like this, let me give you one really strong suggestion here. Especially if you're going on a trip that has a lot of segments, 30, 35 days like we're going on, you're going to want to back up all of those GPX files and put them on a thumb drive, right, so that you can take it with you. One, if anything happens to your GPS, you've got them backed up. You can buy another GPS unit on the road or do something to figure out the rest of your route. However, also, if you have a Garmin unit, for example, and I'm not sure if TomTom has these kind of limitations, but for the new Zumos, you are limited to 13 custom routes. After that, you have to delete the old ones before you can add new ones in. So again, if you're taking a long trip, you're going to need to sit down at some point. You're going to need to clear out the old routes, the ones you've already done, and you're going to add new ones in. I'm probably going to have to do that at least a couple of times, right, on this trip. So I'm going to carry that thumb drive with all of my GPX files on it so that I can go into a library or at a hotel and upload my new files to my GPX. Okay, so after that, we finally have our route all created. We've got it broken down into individual segments. We've got it stored on a thumb drive, so we're not going to lose it. We're ready to go, right? Well, probably not so much. There are still some other things you got to worry about, and one of those is money, right? You're going to have to sit down and create a budget and figure out whether you can actually afford to do this trip. All right, so that's what we'll talk about next time. I'm not going to get into it now, but we will talk about budgets next time. So see you. Ride safe.